Hello and welcome to episode 109 of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast with me, Scott Casson-Rennie, and himself,
Al Coates. We are the turkey twizzler at the vegan buffet, which is the adoption industry.
Why do you keep saying industry? Now, you always surprise me with these little puns that you have on the intros, but the industry word, you have to get rid of that.
Why? It just winds people up.
Right.
It winds people up.
Yeah, you're telling me it winds people up, honestly.
I've spent literally days putting my mental power into those little pithy little remarks at the beginning. You can tell. It's high quality.
Your text was cracking this morning, honestly, which took me about 2 hours to reply to because I just couldn't be bothered with your hijinks. How the hell are you on this fine day? Giddy with the thoughts of podcasting with your favourite adoption influencer. Full of bright ideas, wit and pith, like a coiled spring. And that was before midday. Seriously, I hadn't had enough coffee by then to deal with that sort of stuff. So.
You've done your day's work for the year, haven't you? You're back into your leisure lifestyle extraordinary.
My little lockdown life in the west of Ireland.
Living the dream with your stemless wine glasses. Listen to the outtakes for Scott's comments on stemless wine glasses.
Do. Listen to the outtakes. Just see how we prepare for a podcast.
Prepare in the loosest sense of the word.
Me. Anyway.
We're speaking, for all those who sort of have tuned in to listen to a serious interview with Sarah Lloyd and her cohort, this is what you're going to get. You have to put up with about 4 or 5 minutes of this idle prattle and banter before you get to the real stuff. So I suppose with no more ado, we've got some news roundups to do after we've done the interview, but I think it would be good to get on with Sarah Lloyd, who's a physiotherapist and author of a book in relation to the bus model, which is fantastic. So, are you going to give it?
Let's comment.
Well, I have to say, right, and how the thing that I came away with, and maybe we should.
It's all about you, Al, isn't it? Always all about you. Right?
Okay, right. In that case, I'm just going to put it.
I don't get these. Yeah, but I'll cry later.
I bought the book.
Oh, did you? Mm. I'm still waiting on my racism book from Susan Cousins. I've still not received that into post. Yeah. I know. Well, you need to get in the post. Even, do you know what? Just even wrap it in a bit of Christmas paper or get the good lady C to do that. And then I'll just add it to my Christmas pile because there'll be nothing else on it.
Oh, blessings. Well, we'll do that. Sarah.
Anyway, it's Sarah, Ruth and Vicky.
Yes, who gate crashed the interview.
Kind of, yeah. But they were very useful.
I have to say, it was fantastic and it is well worth a listen. So let's, with no more ado, let's put it on. And then we shall share our insights and thoughts and wisdom afterwards. Well,
yes, we shall. Well,
thoughts, a broader sense. Okay, here we go. This evening, we're speaking to Sarah Lloyd, Ruth Coppin, and Vicky Holland. And Sarah, you're the author of the book Building Sensomotor Systems of Children with Developmental Trauma. So I'm going to start with you, Sarah. If you could introduce yourself, tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Cool, yeah, sure. My name, Sarah, as you said, and I am an occupational therapist and play therapist, and I've been working with children with developmental trauma for a very, very long time, and I guess became aware of what I felt were really big gaps for the way we understood what was happening for children whose early lives had not been as good as you might hope. And so over many years went on to develop this model that we call the BUS model, the Building Underdeveloped Sensory Motor Systems model. It doesn't exactly run off the tongue, but BUS for short is good. And then it's great to be so I work in my working life. I work 3 days a week in Leeds in CAMS, working into fostering and adoption services. And 2 days a week, the rest of the week really, running the BUS team where we're based in Harrogate with actually Katie Wrench, who you know, had just taken up the post as leading up the clinical services. And then a lovely little team with, most importantly, our parent mentors, of whom Vicky and Ruth are two great parent mentors. We're just missing Lindsay tonight, but I'm sure she's with us.
Well, I should say, so Ruth, could you introduce yourself as well? Because you're sat there very quietly and very patiently.
Of course. I'm Ruth. I'm an adoptive parent, and I contacted Sarah at the beginning of 2020 after reading one of her first book. It was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, and really thought the model could help our son. And there's 200-ish miles between us, so I contacted Sarah and asked if we could work remotely. It was actually the start of the first national lockdown as well. She agreed, and it's worked fabulously for us. And since, the remote bus model has been born, so other people are using remote working with bus as well. We've seen fantastic improvements with our own son on a bodily level and emotional. And since then, I've attended training with Sarah and become a parent mentor to support other families.
That's interesting. So I'll then move on. We'll hear more from you later. We'll maybe get some applied knowledge. This is starting to feel a bit like an infomercial, isn't it? But yeah, we'll sort this out. So Vicky, if you could introduce yourself as well, please.
Yeah, so I'm Vicky. I'm an adoptive parent as well. My little girl is 10 now, and first started working with Sarah when she was 6.5. And like Ruth, really seen brilliant results of working with Sarah, and became a parent mentor about a year ago, and supporting other families using the model.
That's great, thank you. So Sarah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I bought the book, I didn't even get a free copy, which I normally torment Jessica Kingsley Publishing, but I'm not bitter. I've let it go. I've pushed through and put it on expenses. Tell me about the...
We have things
They're
like
not
that.
generous with their books. I only got 2 copies myself.
Oh, that's fair enough.
Well, we always get 2 copies of every book that comes out, but we didn't get them. Yeah, we didn't
bad
get them.
planning on our part.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, that's a lie. We normally get 1, and then if it's a picture book, we get 2. So I can.
Oh,
have one.
nice.
I don't do the reading.
Oh, I'd like a picture book. I'm a big fan of a picture book.
Scratch and sniff version.
Yeah, exactly.
So can you tell us what the bus model is? I mean, I've started to read through it, but I think, tell us, what are we talking about? What are the specific needs of children, and how are you what are you offering and tapping into?
Well, so I've worked for a long, long time in CAMS, using psychological therapies with kids to try and help. Well, just to try and help, really. But then when I was working up in Scotland, we were up in Dundee between 2005 and 2013, and had the chance to set up a service, a joint CAMS social work service for looked after children. And that was the first time really in my career that I'd only worked with kids who were or had been looked after. And there's nothing like only that being your only focus to really hone your observation, really. And I guess I just noticed that a lot of the work we were doing, I mean, some of the work we were doing was great and really helpful and successful, but there were a lot of kids who just weren't making the sorts of improvements you might hope that children would make in therapy. And I began to notice that they seemed to often be really out of touch with themselves and their bodies, never mind, trying to think about how they were feeling. They couldn't tell if their tummies were full or empty, if they were hungry. They did lots of bumping and tripping. They didn't seem to be able to use cutlery very well. Or, when we would say, can you tell when you're hot or cold? They wouldn't be able to do that in the same way that they would seem really puzzled if somebody said to them, how are you feeling? How's your day been? And I began to think, actually, I think that's really important, but we don't pay much attention to it. So I tried to find out other people who are thinking about, really, how do we grow into our bodies? What happens so that we're able to do all of these things? And why is it that when children have been foster care or adoption that their bodies don't seem to have developed like that? And I couldn't really find anything. I mean, I looked at quite a lot of the stuff that was kind of the bodily stuff, like Van der Kolk and those people, but really they were talking about a psychological understanding of the body, not really. So how can you get to go up the stairs without tripping? How can you lift your feet off the ground and not slide along the wall and those sort of things? So I went to my kind of paediatric OT colleagues, I'm an OT by trade, and they were kind of saying, oh no, they've got ADHD, that's what you need to treat. And I was thinking, oh no, they haven't got ADHD, or at least we don't know at this stage of things whether they might or not. First of all, we need to understand what has to happen for the brain and central nervous system to develop. So I went off and I did my sensory integration training. And that is great because it tells you exactly that. It tells you exactly what patterns of movement the human baby has to go through to get their brain and central nervous system working as well as it can.
So can I stop you dead? Because that's quite a technical set of things. But are you saying that it's... So from a developmental point of view, baby, on a really practical level, baby does nothing. Mm-hmm. Baby starts to move arms. Parents create an environment where that they support that movement. They stimulate. They let them play on the mat. Mm. They give them appropriate things to hold and grip onto. They stimulate the children. And so, is that what you were saying, that those children who had perhaps missed those opportunities?
Absolutely. And I think because we do those sorts of things intuitively with children, we're not thinking to ourselves, right, my baby's able to lie on their back. How am I going to get them from there to crawling? How am I going to get them from bum shuffling to standing up? We just know that if we create, an environment where babies feel safe and happy, they will naturally progress through those stages of development. And each kind of level will build a platform for the next. So that tiny, tiny baby, kind of by about 6 weeks old, able to lift their head up and have a wee look around. By a couple of months old, when they're on their tummies, able again to lift their head up and get a view of the world. But what we also know, and where I guess I departed from sensory integration theory and practice, was that doesn't talk at all about the relationship, that exactly as you say, Al, it's parents create an environment in which babies feel safe and happy enough to move. So what I wanted to do with the bus model was bring those two fields together, really. The good stuff that sensory integration theory teaches about the kind of that progression through the developmental stages and how it should happen. And with what we know from, I guess, attachment, from trauma, about the sort of environment that children need to thrive. Because babies only move when they feel safe and happy. And if they go through those early months in the states of fear, then they don't do the sorts of movements that lay the foundation for later being able to do more complex sorts of movement. So really that in a nutshell is what bus is. And to begin with, it was a case of thinking, okay, so now I understand the progression that children should go through. So if they haven't gone through that, can we go back and fill in the gaps? Can we go back and take kids through the stages of movement that have been missed? And will that have an effect? And finding that actually, yes, it did. And it was quite good fun to do. And if you could make really good games and activities and have the parents as the most important people in the process, because, when a baby's learning to crawl, they don't just do it like for, 50 minutes a week when they
in a session
see their personal trainer. Yeah, exactly. They do it all day, every day. And that's exactly what bus is. Parents are the most important people in building these systems. I can give you a lens, I can give you some ideas, give you some guidance, but it's that day in, day out doing it that actually will rebuild the systems. So it's been a great, I've so enjoyed getting to this point, and now people being a bit more interested in it. So it's great.
Can I ask a question about, there seems like a parallel with the Bruce Perry neurosequential model of therapeutics, which makes the bus model sound like the best name for a thing ever. The neurosequential model of therapeutics is it's shocking. But his is the idea that the brain develops and it needs to do it in sequence, and if we don't do it in sequence, then there's a consequence, and so we need to then return and try and plug those gaps. So it feels like an extension of that, or a part
Absolutely.
of that.
Yeah, it fits in exactly, but it really breaks down the movement part of things, the bodily part of stuff. What needs to happen? Trying to give people a lens, give parents a lens, really, to be able to look at their children and understand, maybe why they fall over all the time, or why they always come downstairs on their bottom, or why they slide along the walls. To understand which foundation system it is that's a bit underdeveloped, and then give them ideas to try and rebuild that. So I guess it's trying to flesh out a wee bit more.
What I'm conscious, Scott, I'm just butting in. So if you want to butt in, you're just don't.
No, keep going, Al. Honestly, you can.
Thank you. I will.
You can keep going like you normally do.
Ooh, feel the burn.
My questions are a lot more kind of practical and basic, so
right.
I'll do all the highfalutin stuff, and then I'll come to the basic stuff.
Yeah, I'm all theories and models, and neither use nor ornament in the real world. I was thinking as well about, which is a bit practical question. So, what age group of children are we talking about? Are you working at, or is there a upper age limit?
Well, honestly, no, not really. I guess, I mean, I work with children and families, so kind of 18 is the oldest child I see, but I don't think there needs to be any reason why you couldn't do it if you were a bit older. And what I really like kind of working with older teenagers, I mean, to be honest, I love working with anybody really. And the earlier I can intervene in the life of a child, then the easier and the better it is. So I like to, my dream in Leeds, where I'm working in my Leeds post, is I'm always inviting myself to the groups of foster carers who look after babies and the babies who are removed at birth, trying to get in there really, really early and just begin to help their carers understand what their needs are and how they might be slightly different to a typically developing baby. But when you're working with teenagers, what I love about working with teenagers is because they've lived in their bodies for quite a long time, they're really aware of what's difficult for them. And it's usually quite a relief for them to know that it's not that there's something wrong with them. It's just that there's been a gap and that we can think together of ways to fill in that gap. But I love hearing them describe. I always say to kids, how's your body work? Does it do what you need it to do? What do you think? And, with teenagers, they're generally able to say, well, one kid said to me not so long ago, well, my top half works really well and my bottom half works really well. They just don't work awful well together. And he was absolutely right. When he was running, his legs were doing the right thing, but his arms were flailing around and so unhelpful. So then he tripped over. But being able to notice that is a great start to thinking, okay, let's try and sort that out. We just needed to really build that upper body strength so that, and kind of teach his body how to work as one integrated unit so that life was much less difficult for him. And I think as people whose bodies work pretty well, as most of us are, I think we have no sense of how much energy it takes. If you're not getting messages from inside your body about either where it is or what's happening, you have to use an enormous amount of brain power to manage your body, to think about it, to plan movement, to know what movement you have to avoid because you think you're going to look really silly. And what's great is that once bodies start doing what they're designed to do, then so much more kind of brain power is freed up for doing other things, really.
Cool.
Can I just ask a couple of things that you've mentioned? And there's a couple of words that you've mentioned, actually. The first one was about well, I'm using the word labels. You didn't say the word labels, but you said that someone was explained to have ADHD, and you were like, actually, it might not be, or it isn't. Or is that quite common? Because we hear it's quite common. Do you hear it as well, even in your role?
Yeah, I do. And I think, God, as someone who's worked in CAMHS all their life, I don't think that anybody in those who's giving those sort of diagnoses is doing it because they've got a better idea.
Yeah.
But I do think that we're not very good in health. We're good at looking at a set of symptoms and being able to make sense of it, but we're not very good at thinking, why is this child presenting like this now? What maybe are the gaps that we could go back and fill in rather than treating the here and now and the way forward? So I think I always say to families, when they're coming in, I think of it as almost sometimes them having a wee rucksack of diagnoses, usually neurodevelopmental diagnoses, and saying, well, let's just, maybe they're right, maybe, who knows, let's just kind of pop that rucksack on the shelf, let's do some work, let's fill in the gaps that we can fill in, and let's get this child's systems working as well as they can, and then let's take the rucksack back off the shelf and let's have another look, and let's see, does it still seem as if it's helpful? And if it does, great, and if it doesn't, then that's fine too. Feel free to leave your rucksack here. So, just because you experienced early adversity, it doesn't mean you're immune from autism or ADHD or any of these things. Yeah. But equally, I think children with developmental trauma are massively overrepresented in these groups in a way that I don't think they should be.
Yeah. So you just mentioned that word gaps there as well, and you mentioned it earlier. When when we're talking about our children, we use the word gaps, and we talk about repairing. Is it the same thing, or is it very different?
Well, it's not repairing, because I would say it's not broken. I would say it's just not come online yet, because it's a bit like, I don't know, an app on your phone. I'm sure there's a zillion apps that I could have on my phone, but I haven't downloaded them. So I'm not saying my phone's broken because I haven't got those apps. I'm just saying I haven't got them yet.
Love that. I love that. That is brilliant. I love that explanation. That's a good one.
It was just the same with the body. If your body hasn't gone through that, if your body hasn't learned to crawl, then you're probably not going to have lovely hand strength. You're not going to have great finger extensors. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your hand. It just is you've not kind of given it the turbo boost it needs to get working as well as it could.
As you're talking, it's really making me think about a lot of things, from my work in adoption and fostering, but also from my own experience of some of the challenges my friends' children have had. And sort of looking at all the children who still some of that sort of rudimentary, like basic stuff just isn't quite connected, even around like toileting, about not knowing when they need to go to the loo, and then the consequences of that are, you've wet yourself, and that's inappropriate at 12, and then the shame that precipitates bad behaviour, but from that very one little like lack of connection, then there's all of this challenging behaviour that's built on top of it, which is understandable. So it seems like that potentially there could be really easy solutions.
Oh, absolutely. For me, it's just heartbreaking. I love working with teenagers because I love the way you can, think together and solve problems and do stuff. But I hate that they've had all those years of exactly what you describe. I remember one lad who I was working with who, once we'd done a bit of work together, could explain. He was about 9, and he was saying, he just could not stand up. His body, he just didn't have enough core stability to stand up straight. So, what it's like at school, there's a lot of lining up. So he would always, when it came to lining up time, he would always be a clown and do front flips and things. And he said, because then at least it felt like he was in charge of when the kids laughed at him, rather than him trying to stand in line and then bumping and then everybody getting cross with him. And you can think, oh my goodness, what an amazing adaptation, what a smart way of doing it. But also, really, now he can stand in line, and he just doesn't have to have that sort of stress, really, of trying to manage, which I would love for all kids, really.
But not the explanation that the teacher's saying, just stand in flipping line. Do you know what I mean? You are the disruptive child. Why can't you stand in line?
I know. That is my dream, that when, carpet time, I'm always going about carpet time, the number of skills you need to sit on your bottom in a small space on the carpet is, honestly, it's a zillion. And sometimes when children just haven't got all of those, they'll maybe shuffle back and lean against the wall or something. And what I would just love is for teachers to be saying, I can see you're needing that wall to just help you listen. So that's okay, you just lean on there, because I can see that you're doing good listening. As one kid said to me, this lovely teenager, I said not long ago, he was a real flippity jib, and he was wriggling and squirming and going all over the place. And he was in foster care, and his foster carer said to him, we just sit still and listen to the nice lady. And he said, just like out of the mouths of babes, he said, well, I can sit still, but then I won't be able to listen. Or I can go on like this, but I can listen while I'm doing it.
That is really interesting. That is, and Vicky and Ruth, we're not ignoring you. Honestly, we are going to come to you. Does that come under the same thing as the kind of eye contact as well with some of these children? Like in school and in class.
I think so. I mean, eye contact. People get quite into eye contact, don't they? Yeah. And it's one of those things that I kind of think it's a bit like the toileting one. Your parents often say, will this come? And I say, let's just see. And one parent I remember saying to me, when we'd been working, her child was a real giddy kipper and into everything. And she said at the end of when we were working together, she said, do you know what? All these professionals used to say to me, what's eye contact like? And I used to think, what are they on about? What's eye contact? And she said, but now I know what they were talking about was, now when I'm talking to her, she looks at me. I think that's what they were meaning by eye contact, isn't it? So yeah, just being able to be in the moment and connect, absolutely. So although I go on about bodily stuff all the time and all the games and activities that are about bodily stuff, the kind of it can be deceptively simple, because the skill of it, really the art of it, is in working within that relationship and working out what parents are able to manage, what the child's able to manage, so that you get success. And that once you begin to get a bit of success, you can build on that. And what you see, as well as the bodily stuff changing, is the relational stuff shifting too. And not just with parents, with friends and humour, kids talk about and parents talk about, suddenly they can see the child's humour coming through. And it's as if things are weighted down, when you're not really in your body and you're having to spend a lot of your mind managing your body, there's not much room for fun or play or lightness or so yeah, I've forgotten your question, but
it was about the eye contact.
Was it? Eye contact, okay.
No, it's good. It's good. I was asking for a friend while I was asking for me, actually.
It's like your husband.
No, it's from my son, actually, at school. But anyway, we'll move on from that. So, Ruth, you, sorry, we will come to you, Vicky, sorry. But,
all right, you're okay.
I just wanted to jump in there before I started piping in again. Ruth, so you kind of contacted Sarah at the beginning. Well, you were actually the president for all this remote stuff. So how did, and then obviously everybody's had to do it. So how did you kind of approach Sarah with it, and what was your need, if you like?
Yeah, we adopted our son at 16 months old, and in the first 2 years, we noticed various things. We'd been around a lot of children, I particularly had seen children developing through this age. And we noticed things like his coordination, his balance, his spatial awareness. These are all things that nursery then picked up on when our son started in the nursery as well. He had very limited attention, even for his age. Excessive dribble, lacking facial expression a lot, as if he was always concentrating on everything he was doing. Chewing non-food items, very reluctant to take his feet off the ground. He couldn't jump or anything like that, skipping, jumping. He limited his own play, so he didn't want to do anything that was fine motor skills, a lot of sensory play. He wasn't at all comfortable sitting. He was always on the go. He didn't sit. Even when meal times were hard, he was like trying to slide off the chair or get up and move around, or having to support himself with his hands or his arms on the table. And eating was really messy as well. It was really difficult for him. You could tell it wasn't something that was coming easily. He just didn't seem comfortable in his body. And I went through various professionals, another occupational therapist, a paediatrician, the local authority special needs team, which was organised by the nursery, various social workers, health visitors, and they all wanted to discuss things like ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder, or a couple of them said, look, he's been through a lot. He will catch up. He's just exploring. He needs some time. Because he was still, so we're talking from about 16 months to about 3.5. Nothing seemed to fit for me. And I kept researching, talking to people, reading various things. And when I came across Sarah's first book, page to page, it was just a light bulb moment. Just everything I could see that and I knew he'd missed out on all of these things from his history as well, like the tummy time, the crawling, the being held, carried, feeding, all sorts of things that I could see. And got in touch with Sarah, and the rest is history. It's been absolutely incredible. It's made an unbelievable difference. And even after the first lockdown, which was when I first started working with Sarah and he went back to nursery, the first day I picked him up, so many of the team came out and they were like, what have you done? What have you done during lockdown? Wow. It's like a different child. He could sit in their circle time. He could sit and eat his dinner, his lunch with everyone. And he was listening, like he was always listening before, because he'd repeat things that he'd heard, but he was sitting and listening and taking part in the activities. So yeah, we're still working together, and the activities, a lot of them are still the same. Some are changing and getting harder, and it's just been incredible how much of a difference.
What do those activities look like? Because I mean, I'm not a physiotherapist, and I'm not that way inclined. But what does that look like? You know, how do you is it, in my head, if you say you need to teach a child to sit still, my draconian model would be, well, sit still then. Is it? Oh dear.
Or I feel my stick. Yeah.
I think that's important, because that's what we're really used to doing, isn't it? Looking at the skill we want and think, well, what's missing there? You know, and I see loads of parents who can see their kids can't walk, so they make them do marching practice and things because they think that'll do it. But it's a bit like thinking of being able to sit on the chair is like the 9th step on a staircase, and we have to just keep going back down the staircase and getting all of the what I call the prerequisite skills in place. And so, Ruth, you were doing. We started right at the beginning, didn't we? That your wee ones didn't have really great head control. No. Couldn't lie in a straight line on his tummy. Didn't have enough core strength and development. If we think babies develop from the head down, so they get control of their heads, then their necks, then their shoulder girdle, then their trunk, and then control goes out to the extremities, so out to their hands and down to their feet. But what happens with babies where they're in difficult situations is instead of developing from the head down, it's like they develop from the feet up, because they all at some point get up and walk. And I think these babies try and get upright sooner than other kids because it's safer not to be lying. You're very vulnerable if you're lying. And so they start to walk. And as soon as you start to walk, you build muscle, you build bone density, so you get strong legs. But you build that without having the core, the foundation that you need of upper body strength and stability. Which was exactly what we saw with your wee one, wasn't it? He's got great strong legs, but just the rest of his body was really out of sync. So, when you're saying, Ruth, that we work together, I would say you did zillions of work. We probably spoke 3 times, didn't we, over that first 3-month period? And you sent me loads of videos of him, and I had a wee look at them and could make sense of what was happening, and then gave you some ideas of things that we're wanting to do. And it's going back and thinking of what does a baby do in the first 12 months? They spend a lot of time on their tummy. How can we make really games? How can we make being on your tummy seem like the most fun in the world to do? What games could we invent that would be interesting to this child, so they felt like they weren't thinking about lying on their tummy, they were just enjoying what they were doing? And then to build shoulder girdle, I mean, commando crawling is a brilliant way to build shoulder girdle strength when it hasn't been there before, but actually really hard work and not much fun. So you've got to think of, okay, for this child, what is going to make it seem like the most fun to be doing? Let's do treasure hunts, let's do races, let's play with it, pretend we're, doing a million things. Let's pretend I'm always being Sir David Attenborough in the jungle, and we've got to creep through the undergrowth, or we've got to do something, or what will be meaningful to this child or young person, but still allow us to be getting to what we're needing to do. So, I mean, your wee boy he's still only nursery, isn't he? So it's, in some ways, he's not a million miles from, being able to play games of being lions or tigers or snakes or kind of jungle animals or something. Whereas when kids are a wee bit older, you have to think a wee bit more carefully about how to make it seem great to be doing those things. But Ruth, I jumped in to explain why we're not just doing walking practice. Go on, you tell us some of it. You've had some great games going. Tell us some of the stuff you've been doing.
Well, you've touched on some of them. Anything that you can do on lying on your tummy, we do it now. And if there's some resistance, you throw chocolate into the mix, and it tends to work. So tummy time is really important. Commando crawling games as well, and lots of blowing bubbles. A homemade hammock, because his gravitational security like I mentioned before, was not good at all. He did not want his feet off the ground. He didn't walk up or downstairs. He didn't jump. And
Ruth, can I just explain that a wee bit? Because I think it's a funny old concept that we're not really used to thinking about. But if we think about how babies develop a sense of well-being in relation to being away from their parents. First, they have to be with their parents. So all of that carrying around that babies have, when you see babies and a parent, they're usually kind of attached to them in some way, and they do loads of carrying around. And they're not just kind of carried in a kind of a vertical plane, but when their parents bending down to do stuff, they do that. When they're kind of making the dinner, they're there and they're doing that. And all of those experiences of being held and carried build that sense of what we call gravitational security. So a sense of well-being really in relation to the ground, so that then when those children start to creep and then crawl and then walk, they're confident at that. Whereas if, like, you even had spent a very long time just lying flat, hadn't you? In a cot. So none of those experiences that would be the foundations to then being able to run and jump. So because he couldn't run and jump, we didn't do running and jumping practice, but we went right back and did all of the things. And so a homemade hammock was you and his dad, and a bath towel, and just very gently swaying, not rocking. People always want to rock it, but it's swaying, just like when you've got a tiny newborn baby and they're crying, and you just sway gently to try and settle them. It's trying to go back and repeat those sorts of rhythms. But what the skill of it for parents is that while it's all got to be super good fun and like the most interesting thing to be doing, and why wouldn't you want to do this, also you've got to be super picky about technique. So lying on the tummy, absolutely, but both hip bones have got to be on the floor, and where's the head position and where are their shoulders? Because if they're lying on their tummy but actually they're on their side, you're not going to build that. That's not the way a baby does it. So we've got this blueprint of typical development, and it's a way it's working out, okay, where have we come off that and where do we need to go back on it? So you would send me videos of you and your wee one playing games, and I would say, oh, that looks brilliant, but oh, have you just noticed he's always looking down at the floor when he's crawling? Let's just put some interesting stuff up, like a wee treasure hunt. Let's pop some clues around the wall so that he wants to be looking up for the clues and noticing where those are.
Absolutely. And with commando crawling as well, as Sarah mentioned, it's so difficult. So literally one or two movements forward each day, but using the right technique there's no point doing it forever and him just using his legs to push him along, which is what he wanted to do, rather than use his arms. So technique was crucial. And literally within, it felt like weeks, maybe a month or so, he could jump, he could run. We're still working on like the quality of the movement a bit more to get his body working as one, and his arms and legs helping each other. But the change has been incredible.
Wow. That you're making my head fizz. Both Scott and I we're texting each other while you're talking, going, what about talking about our own children? So you're going to have to hang on afterwards, and we're going to have to do a consultation.
The other thing as well,
and my husband as well. I've got issues with him. He's a bit older, but I'm sure it'll work.
I can talk about this till the cows come home.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the scooter as well. He couldn't use the scooter at all when I started with Sarah, and all his friends had a scooter, and they all went to nursery on their scooter, and he just couldn't push along with one foot, and it was literally a matter of weeks, and he was whizzing through the park.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I mean, it's quite an eye opener that it's that quick in terms of the progress.
Some children.
Yeah, for some of course.
Children.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to be safe for.
It's not the same for everyone at all.
But Ruth, from what you're saying as well, you'd notice some quite significant challenges with your little man, and to see that change quite so quickly must
it's great.
You must have done it like literally word for word from Sarah. No, do it this way. No, do that.
A lot of it for me was just making it fit in our lives, because it's got to be repeated throughout the day. You have to be doing like a few minutes of each of the activity as many times a day as you can. Right. So we'd, crawl to brush our teeth in the morning. We'd blow into the cereal, in the milk in the cereal bowl, when we finished our cereal. We'd actually fit things into the day, otherwise and I guess that's maybe partly why we saw such rapid improvement at the beginning. It's definitely at the point, because like I say, we're still working, and it's slowed down now, so we're having to do a lot more to see more improvement. So I think that's going to be really useful from a parent mentoring side for me, to say to other people, don't worry, keep going. It just goes slower. Like the first bit was really fast for us.
Yeah.
It was,
So Vicky, we'll bring you
very patient, Vicky. Very, very patient.
Sorry.
You are very patient, honestly.
Okay.
So tell us, what was your need when you first got involved in this?
Well, as I said, May was 6.5, I think, when we first got in contact with Sarah. She was 14 months when she came to live with us, and a bit different from Ruth in that we didn't have any close family or friends who had children. So you just don't know what you don't know when it comes to what typically developing children should look like. And very similar to Ruth as well, in terms of she couldn't sit still. She couldn't play with toys on her own. She was just like a little whirlwind running around. She would trip over fresh air. So we used to say she's really clumsy and not very coordinated, all of those kind of things. And things were okay. And then once you start getting to school, all the things that we've talked about already became real challenges. So the carpet time, even being able to just go into assembly and queue and then sit in assembly for 45 minutes while, things were happening. And also those fine motor skills that Ruth was talking about as well. She'd never had an interest in picking up pen, paper, doing drawing, doing colouring, all that time. So at the age of 5, then having to sit and start forming letters and things like that, it was just impossible. And that we just felt that she was just becoming further and further away from her peers, in that she wasn't able to do the things that they were able to do. And obviously that's very upsetting, but it's very disrupting as well. And so at school, it was just becoming a more and more isolating experience for her. And so we got in touch with post-adoption support in Leeds. And luckily, thank goodness, Sarah had started working there with them. So that's how we met Sarah. And Sarah came and assessed her and put together a programme of activity that we followed. Again, with really brilliant results. I mean, she loves PE now. She absolutely hated PE because she couldn't do it. Loves it now. Handwriting is coming on a treat. All that energy that was taken up with trying to sit still, keep her body still, is now being used for all other things. So that creativity is coming out. She's finding so much joy in things. We're able to have some great experiences together because she doesn't have to think so much about all those things on a bodily level anymore.
I mean, this doesn't feel like a hard sell, does it?
It just really doesn't. But can I just be honest? I'm sitting here thinking, like, this all seems like obvious.
After the fact.
And I don't mean this as in an insulting way to any of the three of you, but this should be something that's, that's done, like Sarah was saying earlier, that's done from the point of, these children being picked up and what have they missed out on? And let's fill those gaps. And when it comes to the matching of a child with adopted parents, then they should be saying, okay, so this is what we think they need, blah, blah, blah. Now, you mentioned Leeds there, and obviously they're part of One Adoption, which is obviously a very kind of advanced regional adoption agency in some ways, because obviously they're now quite old, and when I say old, I mean as a regional adoption agency, because they're one of the first.
3.5 years.
Exactly, yeah. And I've done a lot of work with them in the past as well. So they're probably at that stage now where they're looking at these kinds of models. But, for a local authority to pick this up, that would be... I'm thinking, I don't want to say impossible, but it'd be very kind of... that's a very newfangled thing we're thinking of here, that kind of thing. But actually, it's very basic, is it not?
It completely is. It completely is, and it's the sort of thing that once you realise that you think, why didn't I think of that before?
Yeah.
I think, God, why did I spend all those years pouring psychological therapies into children who had no sense of where their limbs were? What a waste of time that was. And not because they don't need those psychological therapies, but just, it's a bit like pouring sand into the sea. Until they are inhabiting their bodies and have a sense of themselves, then trying to do, clever thinking is really, really difficult.
Vicky, you were going to say you were just about to...
Yeah, sorry, Vicky, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, cut me in half and I will bleed bus now because I just...
Good.
No.
Let's not do that, but yeah, we get you.
But I am I'm such a huge advocate of it because of... I'm saying it's simplicity and it's not simplistic at all, but it can make such a big difference in such a small way. Yeah. And that's why, we wanted to get out there and spread the word. We were just really fortunate that Sarah was working with Leeds before it went to become One Adoption. But we didn't know anything about her work or, we started thinking, I was Googling ADHD.
But you do though, don't you?
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah,
so
of course you do.
You say you're a parent mentor, Vicky. So what does that mean? Is that you literally going out with your little stall going, roll up, get your bus model here?
No. It's not that just yet. Although Sarah might get me doing that soon enough. I don't know.
I don't know Sarah very well, but I get the impression she could probably get us to do that.
She could.
You're putting ideas in my head now.
At least it's not Glasgow kisses from the south of things. It's like from the east of Scotland, not the west of Scotland. No offence to anybody on the west of Scotland, but she's not going to do wee Jimmy Crankies on us. Sorry, Vicky.
I've got a great vision now. So when families come to bus and their children are assessed, and then the bus practitioner works with the families to put a programme of activities together, that's great. That's fantastic. What the parent mentors do is support the parents in implementing that. So obviously, a lot of the time the families are coming and their capacity is quite low with everything that will be going on to reach the point where they are coming, and getting the practitioners involved. So that's where we provide that support. So at the moment we run webinars where we just get the parents together, whoever wants to come along, to say how's it going, what's working, what's not working so well, and we'll just use our experience to give some ideas and also some reassurance and support, because I think there's sometimes with parents they just want to crack on and maybe life gets in a bit of the way, or they feel the pressure, gosh, well, we've not managed X this week and we should have done, and so it's just giving them some support and motivation, and also showing some real life experience of we've been there and we've done that, and we know what it's like, and think about this or try that. But the parent mentor sessions are really good. We just do them on Zoom, and it's just a really good chance for them to share ideas with each other as well, because I know what worked for us, but it might not work for other kids, so it's just a great chance to steal ideas and provide that support.
So I guess it's a little bit like the peer support thing, but it's very kind of niche in terms of the knowledge that and the kind of model that you're trying to follow, rather than just a generic kind of peer support group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we keep that remit quite tight because we want to just be focusing on.
It's so easy to get into what's happened in education or what's happening somewhere else, and be saying, no, we'll come back. We're going to talk about bus. Let's just think about what's getting in the way. How can we make it? And what I love is that, I've had these set of ideas and, kind of that's a baseline to start from. But what I love is when parents then go away and have, their own ideas about what will work, and being able to say, what a brilliant, like Vicky, your version of play your cards, right? That involves lying on your tummies, a washing basket and the cards on top of the washing basket, and then the music and all of the razzmatazz. And, what I thought of was like, can you find the orange under the yogurt pot? Play your cards right is so much more fun and interesting than that. But then being able to say, what a brilliant idea, come on, let's put that out there, and then let's see somebody else will make it even more interesting. And then it just has that lovely life, really. And that people's experience and expertise is, it's so important to developing and building it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that people have, from what I have read of the book is quite practical, and it's kind of it lays out.
Is there pictures?
A few, yeah.
If you want pictures, you need the first book. The first book is like dandy for improving sensory processing, really, or the Beano.
That would be more my thing.
Yeah. So go for the first one. Loads of
I'll contact my contacts at JKP.
Yeah, do. I'm sure they'll send you one of those. They're only wee. And it's just like a wee book, and really for parents. The second book is really about, if you're wanting to learn how to do this as a practitioner, or then, you know, this kind of is the basis for that. But the first book is really just, have a wee think about movement. Try and notice, see what you're noticing, and see if these ideas help you make sense of it. And, you know, maybe try with these things. They're not going to do any harm. It might do a little bit of good. See how it goes.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I made that as a joke, because you've just defined both books there. So, you know, like,
well, there we go.
Of all the 3 people that are listening, you know, 2 will go for one kind and the other will go for something.
But outside of sort of the Leeds area, how are people, because people want to, I can imagine that there'll be a lot of people listening to this and go, that's Johnny, that's Susie, that's whoever. And beyond getting the books, which I'm sure they'll be flying off the JKP shelves now, we'll
every home should have one.
Never leave.
Stocking fillers, don't you think we could maybe say at this point?
Wow.
Oh, that's me. That's like saying bargain bin £1 or thing. That's
but how can people kind of? I mean, the parent mentor, is that exclusively within the kind of the geography of one adoption, which is Leeds, Yorkshire?
No, it's not. No, there's kind of two bits. So one adoption, I'm commissioned to work with Leeds families with Leeds children, but I only do 1 day a week. So it's not a huge amount of time. And then really the most of the work so families are Leeds-based families, and absolutely we're there, and let's catch it. For the rest of, I guess that's why I set up the bus company, really, so that we could both train. You know, I am so keen. I would just so love. We've started working with like Birmingham Children's Trust and Calderdale and Kirklees and you know, loads of places who are suddenly realising actually there might be something helpful here. Train us up, because I don't want. You know, of course, we'll see anybody, and you know, I'm so happy for us to see anybody through the bus at Oakdale, and people use Adoption Support Fund money, and they come, and we can work with them, and we can work with people in the UK and further afield, really. But I'm also really keen that we train social workers, psychologists, parents, you know, so that the people who are meeting, you know, my dream is that when children are removed, somebody will be thinking, oh, let's have a look at their foundation sensory motor systems, and let's see what shape this is in, and not, oh, there's one person up in Leeds or Harrogate who can do this, but look, in our team we've got 4 people who can do this. And I guess I've designed the model so that so that we can train people who aren't OTs or you know, haven't got that motor stuff. So it's absolutely designed to fill in those gaps, essentially, and to put alongside the great skills and experience that other people have got, really. And it's absolutely not saying, oh, do this and nothing else, but it is saying, do you know what? This is quite good to get in quite early, because if you get this right, then a lot of other things can grow a bit more easily from it.
Yeah. You would think that, I mean, given the prevalence of adversity for lots of children and lots of communities, you'd think every nursery should have someone who should have a basic understanding, because they would be able to go, that child. I know.
Oh, you've just come up with a fabulous business idea there. Sarah's written that down one down as well.
Well, we're doing it actually. You know, we're doing in Leeds. I started a school readiness program for trying to get. You know, we've got a great virtual school in Leeds, and they're great people. And you know, I went to the head of our virtual school and I said, you know, all of these kids are starting school at 4, but you know, give me them at 2, and let's get these things in place before they're hitting school. So, working with the 2-year-olds and their foster carers for, you know, as long as it takes, so that, you know, whatever else might be hard at school, it's not that they haven't got enough core stability to sit on their bottom or to manage carpet time, or if it is that the school have got a program of, you know, understanding why, and then we're starting to, you know, go around and work with sometimes schools that are in areas where kids are missing out on these experiences without being looked after. And there's a great school over in North East Links, where they've got a nursery that they're wanting to be a neurokind nursery, they're calling it, and have done the Bruce Perry stuff, but want something to kind of say, okay, what will this look like week by week? And so that's the bit that, you know, I'm wanting to manualise that, really, so that we can be saying, let's get this in everywhere. Let's just make sure that we're giving the children the best possible chance they can have of being able to do this stuff. And I find that, you know, although we can say, oh, why is not everybody doing this? Generally, when you give people ideas about what to do, they're pretty good at saying, oh, you're right, that does seem quite sensible. Let's do it. So it's not that they're not doing it because they've got some objection to it, but just because really, in a way, they hadn't thought of it or hadn't joined all of the bits together to make a coherent model from it.
And that is wonderful. You have given us a wonderful introduction, and so thank you so much for doing that.
And it is literally an introduction as well, isn't it? Because we say this every time we get someone, and when I say someone, I mean all three of you, on to talk about something as new, as interesting. And when I say new, it's probably not new to you guys, but to the general public, it is quite new. And we always say it's just long enough, but we're conscious that we can only talk for so long.
But I mean, again, it was fantastic to have the lived examples, and I think that's what had sold me. The person who told me I needed to get you on said and they told me their story, which was comparable to yours, Ruth. That what seemed like amazing changes in what had been behavioural problems, but actually turned out to be something else. Just spend time laying on your tummy watching telly, which. Hey, I could do that. I could do with a bit of that.
My husband does that every night.
Well,
and I always wondered why. He's filling a gap. He's filling a gap.
It's therapeutic.
Yeah, exactly,
as you put truffles into him.
No, he's on the slim fast, mate. Sorry about that. Anyway, go on. Off he goes. And throw them at
I am
him.
really trying to conclude this in a professional way, but you're all very, very naughty.
I'm sorry. Sarah seems to have brought my Scottish out tonight. It has to be said. I don't know. I very rarely think, oh, my accent there was just a little bit like Pfeiffer-ish.
Oh, were you a Pfeiffer?
I am a Pfeiffer.
Okay.
Sorry. And there you go. I can see Al rolling his eyes going, oh, my days, I need to wrap this up. Yeah.
Sorry, Al. So Ruth and Vicky, thank you for being open and honest with your personal experience. And Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and kind of giving us a window into what seems like a fantastically interesting world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. I have to say that was, sometimes we do interviews and they're good fun. We always enjoy ourselves, but that one was just such a hoot.
It was, to be fair.
It was a hoot. And the thing I really liked about that was at the end, you and I did this kind of thing. We were all very polite and very professional. At the end, when we said, now we've stopped recording, we went, look, before you go, can we just talk to you about our kids?
Yeah. And we did for about 25, 30 minutes. And I actually mentioned my husband as well.
It
was, but I think that's the point of these kind of interviews, isn't it? It all kind of opens your mind up to other things, and you can recognise a bit of it yourself. Because let's face it, whether we had secure childhoods or whatever, it doesn't matter. We will have experienced at some point something that will have affected us in some way, and it can be traumatic, not in the same sense that our children have faced, but we can relate to it in some way, shape or form. And actually the results can sometimes be very similar, or we can understand, or we can kind of have a bit of empathy towards that. So I think that this is one of the first, not the first, but one of the first where I've actually sat back afterwards and gone, oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, we did talk for a long time with her afterwards. I mean, we were getting into it really, and like it was almost turned into therapy because we were both going, and there's this thing and this, like, and not to kind of play out our kids' stuff, but it really resonated, this idea that actually some of that stuff that a lot of families really struggle with, and we really, really difficult to get to the bottom of. She just kind of brought something to it, and I think that Ruth and Vicky, it was just really good to see the tangibly say, oh yeah, we did this, and then we saw this within days and weeks. And we're all after that. It's the silver bullet.
Yeah. And I think as well, because we both know Katie Wrench, and we've I've known her for a while, you've known her for a while, separately and together. No, I'm saying separately and together, but we together was after we were separate. But what I think is interesting is
you should work for the Clear English organisation. I should
give out the COVID instructions on the tiers, shouldn't I? But no, what I'm trying to say is that
silly man.
That's us banned from Whitehall. Anyway,
again.
With someone like Sarah and Katie kind of leading something like this, it can only be right because everything that comes out of Katie Wrench's mouth is correct. From what I've,
she's going to use that. She's going to use that as a calling card.
Yeah, that's going to be in her next book. It's going to be everything that comes out of Katie Wrench's mouth is correct.
Scott Casson-Rennie, adoption influencer.
Yeah, failed adoption influencer. Adoption influence. I am not. Anyway, but Sarah was well, yeah. I think you felt a bit in love.
Do you know what? I took this away, and we're not particularly talking about the interview because it's long in it itself. And to be honest, we did it a few weeks ago, and then we put it on the shelf.
And then someone else.
End long story.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I thought, I came away and I thought, I've got a Scottish auntie. Who is so Scottish. When I was a kid, she lived in Darlington when I was growing up, and she had a tartan carpet. That's how Scottish she was.
Oh, she was Scottish then?
Yeah, she called Morag, and she's got ginger hair. I mean, she couldn't be any...
No, seriously, Morag and the ginger hair is more of an inclination that she might be truly Scottish than the tartan carpet. Right. Not going to lie to you, as a Scotsman.
And... Right, well, yeah, there was that. And she was genuinely Scottish, but she was also probably one of the nicest people that ever lived. She still is alive. And in fact, she won a British Empire medal because of her niceness. There you go.
Is that a thing? You can win that sort of stuff for being just nice.
Well, it was that and the 25 years of youth service, I think, probably.
There you go, yeah, see?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
There's always a story behind it with you, Colts.
And then I thought, Sarah was just like, I thought, how could you ever say no to Sarah? She's just like the most Scottish person I've ever met. She is the Scottish auntie in your head. But then I remembered your Scottish auntie, and I thought, there are other versions available.
Yeah, Sarah didn't swear every sentence.
Your Scottish auntie would.
Like my Scottish auntie. Oh, I'm sweating just thinking about that. We should get her on. No, that's not good enough.
There's not enough bleeps in the bleep machine.
No, there isn't.
No,
we would definitely be explicit that night. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would have to. But so I just thought, what a wonderful woman and a great advocate, and just the enthusiasm. You just kind of went, well, even if it doesn't make any sense, I'll give it a try.
It was difficult not to. It was difficult. And before we spoke to her, I didn't know she was Scottish. Now, not that has any kind of sway over how I speak to people and stuff, but it was just that kind of warmth in her voice and the way she explained the whole kind of work that she's been doing and how she's doing it, and it just made sense. It just made sense.
Oh, I mean, you could unpick it, and there was just this like natural curiosity in everything she said. Just like, hey, there we are. Okay, ok. And it just.
And I'd like to just apologise to our Scottish listeners.
and the whole nation turned off their iPod.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's a listenership gone down by half.
Oh well. Let's move on to America. No, let's not. Numbers are up in America.
Well, it's no wonder they've been released, haven't they?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, maybe I shouldn't say that.
No, but interestingly, a huge number of people listening in Iran the last few months. Yeah, well, when I say huge, I mean double figures.
Really? Iran?
Yeah, it's a place.
No, I'm not dissing Iran.
I know.
I'm just very surprised, is all.
Well, there you go. Anyway,
see, dear listener, just so you know that Al has all the kind of logins to all this sort of stuff, because I'm not very technical when it comes to podcasts, although I will have to get my finger out for the alternative parenting podcast for Ireland at some point. But I don't see any of this stuff. So when he says it to me, I'm like, Iran, seriously? Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah. Don't know what that's about. Anyway.
Wow.
India, okay. Iran, Chile. Anyway. So hello and bon view and arrivederci and bon jovi.
Don't go any further.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
You can literally see the lights.
But I don't think people realise that's why we do Bon Jovi anchovy, because, you know, it's to cover all kind of angles.
That covers the angles for sure. Right, I think we should move on. I'm aware that it's going to be quite a long podcast. Well, it might be a long podcast. We've got a few things ticking around. It's coming up to Christmas. We've got the Christmas episode all planned and prepared. We're going to do that.
Yes, we do. And we're going to do it live.
live on the 22nd, which will be fantastic. And we're going to have it do it on StreamYard, so that'll be on Twitter and Facebook at the same time, and people can put their questions to us. And we've got the wonderful Becky Brooks, and she can come on and maybe we'll do a summary of the year or maybe a roundup of all kinds of things, education. And I think she's she might be able to give us some updates.
But don't, because the tendency is that as soon as we have Becky on, it's all education. Yeah, which is right, because that's what Becky kind of specialises in. But if you've got any other questions, feel free, because sometimes it can turn into a bit of a bashing of teachers and stuff. And I'm always conscious of that when we have Becky on, because Becky is fabulous. We love having Becky on because we have great banter with her. But feel free to ask other questions. Feel free to ask Al what stupid hat he's wearing that night and why he's wearing it, you know. Feel free to ask me about my beard. You know, that sort of thing, as well as the education stuff.
Bushy beard.
Bushy beard.
Bushy beard.
My manly bushy beard.
Oh, you're so butch.
I think we might just gone explicit there. So moving on. So what time is that on the 22nd?
Will be 8 p.m. on the 22nd, Tuesday the 22nd. Yep, that'll be
8 p.m. 22nd, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, and if people want to contact us via emails, we've had quite a few people starting to get in touch through emails.
We have. We've had a lot of offers of money from various third world countries. So thank you for them, but they're not welcome because I think they're called spam or junk mail.
We've had a lot of publicists as well.
We have had a lot of publicists, and whilst that's lovely, and I know I do need to reply to emails. But Al and I have to have a chat about how we're going to do this in the future.
It's a bit awkward. But people sort of surprisingly, I'm not unsurprised, well, I don't know, maybe it's cultural, but a lot of Americans who kind of want to be on. Anyway, that's boring, isn't it? That's tish-tash-tosh. Who knows about that?
Who wants to hear that?
I'm conscious that we still haven't heard who's going to be the Adoption Special Guardian Leadership Board.
Yes, I'm getting rather bored of waiting now. I sit about all day, every day, thinking, just refreshing Twitter, going, nope, still nothing. That's what my day consists of at the minute. You know, and it's getting rather boring, to be honest with you.
And stroking your bushy beard.
Yes, my bushy beard with my little kitty cat on my lap.
That's a sinister phrase. I've heard that we will know. I believe that there is word afoot that we.
Well, you've got inside info.
I don't know anything, and I've been in a position where people have. I think I've been with people who know, but they've not told me, so that's all very clear. But I think that by the time...
hope it's someone we know. That's all I'm saying on that one.
Well, I know that the Adoption Reference Group, goes up to the Department for Education 3-4 times a year. They are penciled in to chair that, which is the 12th of January.
Fabulous. Well, I will be there. I shall be there on the 12th of January.
With your bushy beard.
My bushy beard. And I will even put a shirt on, maybe.
Champion.
Maybe.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe won't. But, whatever.
And so that would be good to hear that, because I think that we need that to have that resolved. Also, the Adoption Support Fund.
Do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's all still hanging loose in the air. For people who are not aware that we have in England, we have a support fund for those post-adoption order. Children can access that, and it gives you a grant for therapeutic services. So there's that kind of kicking around as well, isn't there? That stuff that would be nice to resolve and get done.
But I mean, I know it's been a horrendous year for everything like this, but I still feel that this has gone on a bit too long. So it'd be good to know the name to put on to that kind of position. Definitely.
I think that... I think we've discussed it at length, but I think it's an interesting post. I am intrigued, and my number one objective is to get them on the podcast.
Well, of course, that goes without saying. And of course, if it's safe enough to do so, then we would prefer to do that in person, like we did with Andrew Christie, because we've done that. We did that with Andrew Christie, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Went to that London, and we sat with him. And why wouldn't they want to come and talk to us?
I can't imagine. That feels like I can't imagine. I'll get my minions on the inside to have a word in their shell. The other thing,
are we not sharing minions at the minute? Are they not our minions? These people that you keep referring to. I mean, I never see them because I can't get to podcast hours at the minute. But Do they still work for us? Are they still there?
Yeah, they are. We've got lots of people on the inside who are just like puppets on a string who just do our bidding and give us inside information as to the intricacies. The last from the notices is that the government have just announced a new children's commissioner. The image of the previous commissioner leaving the building and kind of saying over their shoulder, and this is what I really think, has kind of, we talked about that. The new one,
Dame Rachel D'Souza.
Yes. But again, Twitter was kind of like quite, oh no, it's just an inside.
Yeah. Exactly. But interestingly, she's locked her Twitter account. Now she could. I mean, I don't know her. I've heard the name. Funnily enough, she's from the east of England. That's maybe why, because obviously I used to live in the east of England, and she's kind of, isn't she CEO of a Academy Trust? Yeah. So that may be why I've heard of her. The Inspiration Trust, and it's a Norwich based one. So that's maybe how I've heard of her. I don't know. I may have sat in a meeting with her, with Mr. Norman Lamb, who was the MP from North East Norfolk, I think, when we're talking about ACEs and stuff like that. But not a name that kind of sticks out in terms of she's done this, that, the next thing. But of course, my first instinct was she's CEO of an Academy Trust. And generally, adoptive parents don't like Academy Trusts. But she seems to be doing it a bit differently from what I've seen. Well,
yeah, I mean, I guess it depends where you read and what perspectives you get in it. And it's hard to know. And I think any job like this, it is a political appointee, because you have to work with politicians. Politicians want to feel like you're safe and you can work with them. So they're not going to kind of get in some maverick who's going to shake things up. That's just never going to happen.
No. That'd be daft, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, and it just wouldn't work. They'd just get sacked. You see that occasionally with some like these czars. I think there was one mental health czar that lasted like 4, 5, 6 weeks before they jacked it in. And does she vote Conservative? Probably. Does she? There's some sort of some of the stuff I've read is about her being kind of her behaviouralist, maybe a bit more disciplinarian. But ultimately, she's run 14 schools, so she knows kids. We've got to hope that she knows children.
And also, what those schools have been picked up on, they tend to try and resolve as well. From what I read, I mean, it's very, very kind of quick, the research I did, because this was only announced late this afternoon, wasn't it?
Breaking news.
I tell you, I've never been so stressed. I was sweating as I was decorating the Christmas tree, trying to read up on this dame. But that sounds rude. This dame.
That there's an image that one can hold in one's mind. But she has been. I was noticing that she also has been quite critical at times of the government and in relation to some of the
exactly.
And there's always that tension.
Yeah, but would there? I mean, Anne Longfield tried to do a lot of stuff in her tenure, and some of it was great. Some of it, let's face it, as parents, we were kind of a little bit critical of her at some points as well. So, that's going to be the case as we go forward as well. That's how these roles work. You're not going to get it right first time all the time,
I'm not inclined to just talk for the sake of talking, but I am. Don't forget to remind me. I know you sound like
BS. That's BS. I've ever heard it.
How very dare you? I must tell you about
the sound of his own voice.
I had I had my BBC Zoom moment today when I had 3 interruptions from 3 different people in a Zoom meeting. One of them involving the underwear of a 15-year-old, which is quite bizarre. I'll bring you back up to speed on that. I know. World of the strange, my life. I was going to say, how are your preparations going for Christmas? How's the bands doing?
I'm going to speak candidly now. Are you ready?
I'm strapping myself in. I'm braced.
Yeah, because you should. To be fair, mother-in-law is here for a visit. Now that's lovely because we haven't been able to see her obviously for 9 months, and now that restrictions have relaxed a little bit, she's here. She's doing her 2 weeks of isolation. But the kind of 2 weeks of isolation, which means she's here for 2 weeks. So Christmas preparations are going very well.
Good.
But it's interesting. It's interesting because I thought yesterday that the Christmas blip had happened, and then we had a Zoom meeting with school today, and it turns out that wasn't a Christmas blip. That was hormones.
There's raging hormones in Cass and Rennie Towers.
And they're not mine and not my husband's, and they're certainly not the older. Well, they could be the older kids, but they don't go to school, so that kind of discounts that. But essentially, it's this thing about perhaps buying gifts for the ladies, shall we say, and them not being reciprocated in the way that perhaps you would have wanted them to be reciprocated.
Good grief! It's hard being young, isn't it?
Isn't it just? So Christmas is going well so far. We've had our first Christmas dinner, which is fabulous.
Oh wow! That's way early.
Yeah, we're so we're 3 weeks ahead of everybody else. We like to get in there.
Is that the full Monty? Is that crackers, stuffing?
Yeah.
Full on Christmas meal.
Yeah. I've chucked all the shit, the crappy toys from the crackers in the bin. We had a turkey. I've never cooked turkey before in my life. I swear I have never. But mother-in-law bought it and she said, "There you go. There's the meat for the Christmas dinner." And I was like, "Listen, it normally comes in a foil tray and I stick it in the oven."
Normally, yeah. You just
bought a Martha Sparks Gold turkey, and I was thinking, and I was sweating cooking it because, of course, I thought you had to kind of keep basting it and all that sort of stuff. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm just going to follow the instructions on the thing. It was the most moist thing that I've ever tasted. Anyway, I'm boring now, so I'm going to shut up. But that's how our Christmas is going so far. On the 9th of December.
Well, I often look at like adoption Twitter and adoption Facebook, and I kind of see a lot of families or a lot of people it's a time of stress and anxiety. And
it is massively.
Yes. But we just don't get that with our kids. Just never had that.
Oh, really?
Never.
See, we get it. But so this is the first year. I will say this. This is a first year in a few years, actually, and I think probably COVID has had a bit of a contribution to this, that the tree has gone up. I mean, it's only the 9th, the tree's gone up. Well, it went up yesterday because I bought it yesterday, but the point is, this is as early as I have ever done it. And on Facebook how it comes up with Facebook memories?
Yeah.
And every blimmin' year for the last, since I joined Facebook, I've got a photograph of a Christmas tree. And interestingly, I keep saying I'm going to chuck it away, and it's still here. But this year I bought a new one. But that aside, last year we went on a cruise before Christmas, and we didn't have any of that run up. And it was such a relaxed, chill time, which was quite awkward in some ways because we weren't really prepared for Christmas then, if that makes sense, because we hadn't had that kind of walk into it where you go to shops and you can't get anything and blah 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 blah. So that's quite unusual this year, but at the same time there is a little bit of stress, not necessarily with the older two now because they're adults. They'll get their 20 quid. That's it. That's all they're getting. They don't pay enough to live here, so that's it. They're getting the letter written to them saying the rent's going up in January. I'm joking, by the way, but that's
and 20 quid and a chocolate orange.
Exactly, yeah. But they get what they get, and they understand that because they know they're older, and they know that
things change.
They get the value of things. Whereas for Jacob, obviously, it's not been the best years in terms of income and what have you for us as a family, because obviously I haven't been able to go where I used to go and do what I used to do and stuff. But he gets that as well. And I think that actually that's kind of reduced the stress level a little bit because there's less expectations, because we've been more kind of open about the fact that there may be less this year. And I think that works well.
Well, I don't know what it is. We find that, I don't know, it's never
You're lucky if that doesn't happen.
It's never been a stress at all for us in any way whatsoever. I mean, it's a stress in the fact you've got 6 kids, 2 dogs, 3 cats, a wife,
2 grandchildren,
a live-in lodger. but it's busy, but we've never had kind of like that linked to kind of early adversity or trauma or memories or history.
Yeah.
We did have one Christmas which was, excuse me, well, it was really odd. It was the first Christmas Kirsty could drive, the eldest, and that had been the year when their biological sister had kind of got in touch with them, and so sort of tea time Christmas they went, oh, we're going to go and see our family. And well, it was really odd because it didn't come totally out of the blue. We kind of knew it was hovering around because we'd seen. But I remember sort of just me and the good Mrs. C and Queenie and the little ones were all in bed and just thinking, oh, it's like 7 o'clock on Christmas night and it's just the three of us. It was a really odd sensation. And just kind of having to really be strong and resist the temptation to go, oh, this is terrible, we've lost our children. Because we hadn't, no one to know.
And I think that's really interesting as the years go on as well with me, and I don't know about you, and I'm not. I think I've had very brief conversations with the older two as well, and I've also been thinking lots, especially after the conference, in terms of contact and all that sort of stuff. But it's not quite as extreme as 15, 16 years ago when we were first going through it, going, imagine if that happened. Oh, they'll be grateful that I will be their parent, and and I save them and all this sort of stuff, because that's all BS. Let's face it. And sitting here that way on, I'm so privileged that these two guys still want to be in my life. That's how I feel about it now.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's completely different, and I'm not going to beg them to stay in my life, but as long as they want me in life, I'm here, and vice versa. Yeah, and I think that's a surprise, because they've had very similar kind of experiences to your lot in terms of contact, and like making contact with birth relatives and all that sort of stuff. Circumstances, sadly, have meant that they've not been able to kind of do it face to face as yet, but that will come, and I'm fully supportive of that. But 15, 16 years ago, I'd have been complete opposite about it, and I think we've learned so much. And as we come into this time of year, this is when it becomes really, I guess, hard for them. And hard, it's not about us. It's not about us as parents. It's about them. And we need to take into account how they feel around this time of year. Because, I was watching a program today, actually, and it said, I'll tell you what it was. This is how my life has become. It was loose women. And the loose women had their husbands on. You're a grown adult. I know. What are you doing watching loose women during the day? I don't understand. I was eating my bacon sandwich, my cheesy bread from Lidl's, bread and bacon and brown sauce, right? Just so you've got an idea of what my life, exactly, my bushy beard.
Bushy beard.
But they were talking about Christmases, and what they were saying was that your Christmas is defined by your childhood. So you will probably have it in your head that tradition says that the childhood Christmas that you had is a childhood Christmas that you're going to try and borrow it. So when two people come together, and I remember this with Tris, the very first year the boys were with us, and we clashed so much that Christmas, because he had it in his head this was going to be the ideal Christmas. I had it in my head this was going to be the perfect Christmas because we had children. And then Christmas Eve, actually, it went kaboom, and there was kind of, and not helped by my mum being with us at Christmas Eve and blah, blah. But long story short, we all have this kind of vision of what Christmas should be like from our own childhood. And that kind of, you have to knock that out yourself. And I think that's maybe one of the things that we should be kind of thinking about in preparation as birthdays and Christmases and,
it's
Easter
not about
and all that sort of stuff, because it's not about us as adults. It's about these children and how they might deal with it, rather than how we would love to shower them with these gifts and make sure that they've got this and they've got that and they've got that. And Elaine Amy is a prime example of that. And she gets it. And she's gotten it for a few years, but this year they've decided there's nothing inside that would dictate Christmas. They've got a little thing at the front door, and she's put this on Twitter, so she won't mind me saying it. She doesn't listen anyway, but she wouldn't mind me saying it. But I think that is how open their family is in terms of the discussions about it, because they want to know what the children want rather than what they want.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that when you do, especially those first few years where you're building this fantasy, and you're
That's exactly what it is. The fantasy. Yeah.
And so when we talk about children not coping, sometimes it's maybe we're not able to look in the mirror and go, actually, we're not coping. Because we'd hoped that they would get up at this time and do this and this and this. Or the night before, we were all going to sit in our pajamas and have a lovely time and sing around the tree. Whatever it was. And sometimes I think that's a lot of adoptive parenting is about letting your expectations and hopes go. And even today, I mean, I was on Twitter this morning, there was Insta Mummy, and she was kind of just describing difficult moments.
See that.
And you go, that idea of this sadness that can often be part of an adopter's life is that actually, because I know you know your story, I know my story, I know a lot of people's stories, and actually that a lot of what I'd thought parenting would be is just not being there.
Yeah.
And
but
that's
then
just the reality.
That is the case but that is the reality for a lot of people, whether it's adoption or birth children. You know, that is the reality, because it's not. You know, that kind of perfect Christmas that you see in your head, well, that as well, but that perfect Christmas that you've got in your head, that wasn't necessarily perfect for your parents either. You know, there was stuff going on behind the scenes that we didn't know about. So, you know, it's kind of, that's... But
I think that I found Christmas much easier. I think when the children were really little, I think I found it quite stressful because I think, you know, it's kind of a, you know, stereotypical guy working right up till Christmas Eve, coming home Christmas Eve, and it's like, bam, into Christmas. Found that really hard. And maybe when I got to my mid-30s and I just thought, stuff this. What the hell happens. Do you know what I mean?
You have to be actually, like that. You have to.
So little things like one of my children just ain't going to sit at the Christmas table.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? Am I going to make that a big deal, or am I just going to go, if you're happy, you know, you're welcome. There's a seat there for you.
I would love it if one of my children said
please do we? Well, but it matters. But there's a bit of a sadness to me that, and I thought it'd be lovely to have this picture postcard image of Christmas played out in our living room. But actually, the alternative is a much more peaceful Christmas where they're happy, we're happy, we're able to just relax and not be on tenterhooks. So that's,
let's not have expectations of them to be able to do it. And I think as well, for me, as they've gotten older, it's become that little bit easier as well. I know that isn't the case for everybody, and you know that's fine. Definitely with the adult children, the twenteens or the adult teens or whatever you want to call them, that has definitely become easier over time. And I know that they kind of just see Christmas as a bit of a holiday, a bit of a downtime, a bit of a time to spend with us, and you know that's really nice. That is really nice because, you know,
just chill the hell out. Everyone, just chill the hell out.
Chillax. Take a pill. We've all got them. Take a pill.
What? I don't need pills.
Oh, don't you? Oh, well, lucky you, Courts. Honestly.
Well, that is another episode. We should do one about adopters and their pills.
It needs to be a paid for one, though, so that perhaps people who don't want to hear the kind of lives of adoptive parents.
Adopters and their vices. I think we should leave it there because we're probably about way over an hour and a half now.
Yeah, you're boring me anyway, so.
Paint dry. So, as always, I hope you have a fantastic with your bushy beard. And your bushy beard.
I have to tweet a selfie of that on Saturday night for those that may have listened.
To the bushy beard.
Bushy beard.
Bushy beard.
Simon Armstead is going to go mental over this beard, you know.
Oh, he loves a bit of goss, that man. And then the next time we talk, we've got loads of really interesting voices coming up. Of whom only one I've got stacked high. Only one is an adopted
I
parent.
saw because you put you did an Insta live, didn't you, from our account? We're on Instagram as well, you know. And I mean, it was a bit rubbish for an Instagram live, but anyway, as it goes, we've only got one adopted parent in our library of like 50 recordings, and the rest of them are kind of adult adoptees and
different voices. I have to say, I mean, we are the turkey twizzler in the vegan buffet, which is Instagram, aren't we? I tell you.
Yeah, I don't think Instagram is really for us, but we try. It just, but right. So just before we go, so if we rewind,
if people want to leave now, just leave.
Yeah,
just go.
Yeah, but
we're just going to keep going because we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, we are. But what I was going to say was was that
has he gone?
10,
has he gone?
12, yeah.
Shh.
Because we want to talk about you. Have you gone? You're still there? No, you need to press end. No. Anyway, 10, 12 years ago, Twitter used to be like Instagram, but without the pictures.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm loving. I do like read. I like kind of scrolling sometimes and seeing some of the positive stuff that's going on, and people being matched and stuff like that. But all I'd say is, if we've got any people from Instagram, just be very careful what you post, because there will come a day where Instagram becomes kind of that place as well. Yeah, well, it's bound to happen at some point. So just be very careful. Be very, very careful. And you can put a smiley face in front of your child's face, but that doesn't stop it kind of being, I've got a real big issue about the Instagram kind of self-promotion thing, the competition thing, the commercialism of it, all that sort of stuff. It's really kind of beginning to become a thing. And we've talked about it before within the LGBTQ plus community.
What's that
there's
all
a lot
about?
There's a lot of commercialism around this. Yes, we can be parents. I've been a parent for 15 years. I'm not out there selling my... Yeah, it does. Tell me about it. But I'm not out there selling my wares and trying to kind of, I don't know what the word is. But it's just, you just need to wind it in a little bit, guys, because, it's going to bite you in the backside at some point.
I do feel like Instagram is a kind of a social media firestorm waiting to happen in relation to adoption.
And it will happen, because Twitter was a very safe place to begin with for adopted parents, and that's what that's one of the reasons I joined. I'm sure it probably was. Well, I don't know why I joined. Actually, I can't say specifically why I joined.
I still feel totally safe on Twitter. I'm more careful because I know that there are people who are going to go, "That's not acceptable," and that's no bad thing. Whereas I don't think there's those voices on Instagram. I think I've seen a few things recently that I've gone, what the hell? If your kid sees that, they're gonna be livid.
And that's the thing. And there's kind of people who will eventually pick you up on that as well, because that was one of the things with Twitter, wasn't it? It was legitimately oversharing, and it is legitimate that there was a lot of oversharing going on. And Kat Teresa, friend of the show, and someone else had this conversation the other day about the acronyms used to describe without names and all that sort of stuff. So DH being dearest husband, or OH being other half, or the name of your child, or the age of your child rather than name, and all that sort of stuff. And that harks back to kind of 15, 16 years ago for me, in terms of when I used to use the Adoption UK forums. But that is that's a nice way to do it. But then if you post a photograph of them with it, that's and it doesn't matter if you put a shady bit over their face or a smiley face or whatever, it just doesn't work. So just you're going to be picked up on it at some point. And just be aware that your kids can see this stuff. Nothing I have said tonight would upset my children. And all three of them listen. They dip in and out. They'll listen to all the episodes now and again. I hear my voice playing out of Jacob's bedroom quite a lot. I'm like, oh no, you're not listening. That is weird. That rubbish again, mate. That said,
Peanut listens. And I occasionally, if I'm feeling malicious, I shout, Alexa, play the Adoption Fostering podcast. And
I'm glad I don't have Alexa in my...
And then I leave the house.
I'm sure some people have Alexa play the Adoption and Fostering podcast in their lounge while they're playing this. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. So yeah, I think it is it's worth repeating and returning to. And I think that in some ways I guess that one of the challenges of the pod with what we do is that we've touched on issues, but that was like 3 years ago. Some of the stuff we've talked about revisiting.
It's so fresh. Yeah. And people might think we're all farts, but we've been through it. And we're still going through it. Oh. Well, you're an old fart. I'm still quite young. I'm only 44. I'm pleased to say.
It's funny. Peanut said to me next, she said, how old is Scott?
And what did you say, Coatsy?
I said, I have no idea. 42.
I'm taking that. Did she really? Oh, bless her.
Well, I'm paraphrasing. She said, "What's your best friend's age?" And I said, "You mean Zippy?"
And you used me as an example.
I started with Zippy, and she went, "No, the other one."
Oh my God, we're going to get explicit now, mate. The other one. Well, actually, do you know what? I don't mind sharing that with Zippy, because Zippy's all right.
Zippy's 40. I think Zippy's 44 as well, so...
I think we can say that Zippy is your heterosexual best friend and I'm your gay best friend. How does that go? I think that's fair.
I feel like there's a sitcom just waiting to happen.
There probably is somewhere, yeah. Could you imagine? Yeah, no, I'm not going to go there because that would just be... I can just see me, you and Zippy sitting on a sofa, drinking our respective drinks and bitching about whatever was on the telly or whatever was on social media.
Well, the next
a little bit like
we get,
Friends.
But, yeah, not Friends. That's what we could call it, not Friends. If the next publicist who gets in touch with us, we'll have a word with them and say quid pro quo. Get us a gig doing this. Anyway, we're way off the beaten track now. I'm going to go and do something much less exciting.
Much more interesting, you mean?
Something like that. I'm going to...
It's always the way I feel. At the end of these podcasts, that is how I feel. Dear listener, or one of you that's kept on listening to the end, that's how I feel. I feel like he just kicks me off because he's had a long day.
Well,
and he
some
wants
of us...
to go to his
yeah,
bed.
I do. And I don't want to stretch the patience.
Watch what you're saying.
I don't want to stretch the patience of anyone listening. It's fine.
Okay.
Look, I'll stay and talk to you while I edit. Don't worry.
Okay.
All right. Bless your heart. Stay well, and I'll see you soon.
We will.
Excellent.
Bon Jovi.
Anchovy.
Hey, I got enforced, but you didn't.
Bon Jovi.
Anchovy.
Yeah, I can edit it now, can't I?
You
Your beard is very bushy.
Oh, I tell you, I've gone very masculine.
You're many things, but you are butch.
There's a first time for everything.
As we like to call it, Butch Scott.
As he takes a sip of his wine.
With his little pinky.
And his stemless wine glass as well. What's that all about? Don't know.
Is that not just a glass? A stemless wine glass is not just a glass?
Well, kind of, yeah. I'm not getting it, really, to be honest. And a tip over in the dishwasher. I mean, it's third world problems, let's face it, but, you know.
First world problems. I was going to say,
yeah, I was
going to say your idea of the third world is very different to mine. I say Tarquin, and the dishwasher's playing up again.
I've been watching far too much of The Crown this last couple of days. Anyway.
There's a lot of that going around.
Shall I crack on then?
Yeah, episode 109. Go for it.
Yeah, fabulous.
Me.
Are you recording, though?
Of course.
Oh, right. No, it's just because it didn't come up, but you're not using Zoom, are you?
I'm not.
Me.
Stupid boy. Bushy beard.
Yes, I know.
You can hardly get close enough to the microphone. It's so bushy.
I know. It's
David
like,
Bellamy would be
I'm
proud
brushing
of
on it. I'm brushing on it.
Do you find that you fidget with your beard? I fidget with mine all the time.
I actually have stopped. I've stopped. And the reason I've stopped is because I've been looking on the old YouTube how to care for your beard.
You've been Googling bushy beards on YouTube. No,
special
interest websites.
I use product and stuff, you see, whereas yours is kind of just like cavemanish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas mine's is kind of groomed and cared for, should we say? I don't know if that's the right word. But yeah, so I know how to get the most out of it. That's why it's so bushy at the minute, because it's not.
Perhaps
it's looked after.
Perhaps we could do another podcast
on Scott's bushy beard.
It can have its own podcast.
But yes, it is looking rather fab, I have to say.
Oh, you could get sponsorship from bushy beard
grooming
products.